worship time. Has the Lord been good to you this week? Has the Lord been good to you this week? If He has, and I ask you to stand to your feet and praise the Lord with us. Put your hands together for the Lord.
Hallelujah.
You are my strength. Thank you, Father. Strength like no other. Strength like no other. And reaches to me. Thank you, Father, for being our strength.
comfortable in the presence of God. Thank you so much, New Life, for inviting me in here today. I am comfortable in the presence of Jesus Christ. This is my most comfortable, my most natural place. Underneath the heavens that are open wide, underneath the hands of God, I am comfortable in the presence of Jesus Christ. Amen, Jesus. Amen, Jesus. Birthing your promise, it's time to push. I looked at that when you all sent that to me and I said, what an estrogenically created statement for Women's Day. Birthing, holding your promise until it's time to push. Ladies and gentlemen, you are going through a period of time. You're going through a period of time, and today, I want to push you a little bit to come outside of the box, because you see, I went outside of the box about 23 years ago. I was your regular card-carrying Seventh-day Adventist, educated, well-socialized, following certain rules. You asked me to speak today. I found Jesus. I was a pastor's daughter, and I was raised in the Seventh-day Adventist church. It took me until the age of 37 to find Jesus. Prayer is the answer to every problem in life. It puts us in tune with divine wisdom, which knows how to adjust everything perfectly. So often we do not pray in certain situations because from our standpoint, the outlook is hopeless. But nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is so entangled that it cannot be made right. No mistake is so bad that it cannot be remedied. No human relation is too strained for God to bring about reconciliation and understanding. No habit is so deep-rooted that it cannot be overcome. No one is so ill that he cannot be healed. No mind is so dull that it cannot be made brilliant. Whatever we need, whatever we desire, if we trust God, He will supply it. If there is anything that is causing us to worry or be anxious, ladies and gentlemen, let us stop rehearsing the difficulty and trust the healing life, love, and power of God. Pray until something happens. Our prayers are heard in the heavenly realm. The Bible tells us to be anxious for nothing, but in everything, in prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Matthew chapter 6 advises us not to worry about our challenges. Accept the challenges and allow them to change and elevate your belief in God and your confidence in yourself. That's the waiting period. That's the birthing period. Allow your challenges to allow you to elevate yourself and your confidence in God. It says, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life. Do not worry about what you'll eat, what you'll drink. Don't worry about your body, what clothes you'll put on. Is not life more than food and body more than clothes? Therefore, do not worry, my friends. Don't worry saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow has enough problems. Why? Why don't you worry? Because your life is surrounded by the kingdom of God. Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your lifespan? Hezekiah prayed. Do you remember the story of Hezekiah? Back in chapter 19 of 2 Kings, Hezekiah received a letter from the messengers, and he read this letter. Now, this message told him that the Assyrian kings were going to come to his kingdom and devastate his kingdom. Well, he knew of the past. He knew of their successes. He knew that those kings destroyed the gods. Even though they were built from stones and from brick, they destroyed the gods of those other kingdoms. So, understandably so, he was quite concerned under fear. He took this message to the temple. He took this message and he presented it before God. He says, "It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. It's happened that they have thrown down their gods into the fire and destroyed them. Now, Lord, our God, deliver us from the hands, that all of this earth will know that you alone are the God." Then Isaiah sent a message to Hezekiah. "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I have heard your prayer. I have heard your prayer." Push, pray until something happens. The important words here is, I have heard your prayer. Follow me to 2 Kings chapter 20. Now, at this time, Hezekiah became ill and was sick unto death. Now, Hezekiah knew Jesus Christ. He knew God. He had a relationship with him. Once again, Isaiah came back to Hezekiah with a message from God. Isaiah told Hezekiah, "Get your house in order, because you are going to die. You will not recover." Now, when Hezekiah heard this message, the Bible says that Hezekiah wept bitterly. He wept bitterly. I had an opportunity to be with my best girlfriend weeks before she passed, and I was praying that she continue to live. She prayed. We had our prayer warriors, and she looked great. She didn't lose any weight. She was coherent. I just expected that she was going to live. When the doctor came into the room, and I was there, and told her that the cancer that she held in her digestive tract was inoperable, he started to tell her about a story of his mother-in-law who prayed until she was well. She prayed the cancer away, and so I was really excited. And I said, well, she's going to live because she doesn't even look sick, and we're going to make it through. With all of my medical knowledge, I couldn't understand when the doctor was telling me and telling her that she couldn't make it. My mind just couldn't go there. I couldn't accept it. About a month later, she closed her eyes for the last time. I prayed that she would live. Okay, all right. God is not caught off guard, ladies and gentlemen, when a person passes. He didn't say, oops, I didn't do it right. Okay? He knows what's going on here. He heard your prayer. And what he's coming with now, he's coming with a host of angels to garner arms around you. I know, ladies, that you have prayed for your children, you prayed for your husband, you prayed for your own life. I know where you go when you go up into that gap, boldly standing before God. I know where you go. You have mustered up all of the strength and said to God in heaven, you get those angels to get your hands off of my husband. He is not going to die. You said to God, you know how I have walked faithfully before you. I'm pulling in all of my investments. You take your angels and allow them to garner me up to get the hands of the evil one off of my children. Get the hands of the evil one off of my life so that I can continue my purpose here. I know where you've gone, ladies. When Hezekiah received this message from Isaiah saying that you are going to die, he turned and he said, remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully with wholehearted devotion and have done what is good in your eyes. Isaiah left his friend after delivering this information, and before he could reach the middle court, the word of the Lord came down to him and said, go back. God changed his mind. You go boldly before the throne. God changed his mind. He said, tell Hezekiah, the ruler of my people, this is what the Lord, the God of your father David says. I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. I will heal you. Once again, he said, I have heard your prayer. I'm going to go from pray until something happens now to praise until you see the manifestation of your answer. Ladies and gentlemen, we can pray for what we want. He heard you the first time. The Bible said it. I heard you when you said it the first time. Now you're going to move from being impregnated to holding that child, holding and nurturing that child and making sure now that that child is safe and growing. So you're going to praise until you see the manifestation. I have heard your prayers. Remember back in Matthew, we were admonished not to worry. Therefore, I tell you not to worry about your life. Therefore, do not worry what we'll eat, what we'll drink, what we'll wear. Do not worry about tomorrow. Start praising until you see the manifestation. This means that we remain in relationship with Jesus Christ. This means that we remain underneath the open heaven. Friends, when we speak to God, he's always joyful. He's always happy. By any means necessary, he gets you in his court. He already knows about the issue that you have. What he wants is to have relationship with you. Sometimes I have two daughters, and sometimes they may make a request and they may think I have forgotten, but I heard them the first time. As a matter of fact, as they continue down their life's journeys, I can anticipate their questions. And I start to prepare for the answer of their questions. I am more than happy to give them what they want. Hebrews says, well, your earthly father loves you like that. How do you think God in heaven loves you? I'm ready to give them what they want. Fear not, little flock, whatever your lot, it's your Father's pleasure to give you the keys to the kingdom. Philippians, that's in Luke 12:32. It's our Father's pleasure to give us the kingdom. Ask whatever you want under an open heaven. Ladies and gentlemen, stop the worrying. Praise until the answer is manifested. I was praising this week because I needed one of the instructors at college to help my daughter out. And I asked some of my prayer warriors, I called my sister, I called my girlfriends. I said, all I want is just some extra work. I'm not asking to give anything. And once we prayed, one of my aces, my ace boon coons, you know that statement? She said, let's start praising, because we sent it up. And what I asked for was to soften the heart of the instructor. Because you're a teacher, teach her. God answered the prayer. Sometimes not right away, though. Sometimes he doesn't answer those prayers right away. It doesn't mean that he didn't hear us the first time. It didn't mean that he didn't hear us the second time. It means that the prayer is coming. I'm going to go to Daniel chapter 10 and praise until something happens. In the 3rd year of the Cyrus, the king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, and its message was true, and it concerned a great war. Verse 2 goes on to say that it indicated that Daniel fasted and prayed. He fasted and prayed because he received a vision, and he couldn't understand it, and he wanted to know what this great vision meant. It overwhelmed him. The vision was about a great war. So what Daniel did was he decided to fast and pray for 3 weeks. All right? So one day the Bible says that on the 24th day of the 1st month, Daniel was standing on the Tigris River, and a man appeared before him dressed in linen with a belt of gold. His body was like topaz, his face with lightning, his eyes like torches, his arms and his legs bronzed. His voice sounded like a multitude. This angel was sent to answer his prayer. Not right away do we get our prayers answered. Now, when I read the chapter 10 in Daniel 8 and 9, it seemed to me as if Daniel fainted when he saw the vision of this man. It said, I had no strength left. My face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking, and as I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep, my face into the ground. So this amazing vision of a man was standing before him. He went down. As Daniel was down, the man touched Daniel and said, Daniel, you are highly esteemed. Consider the words that I am about to speak to you. Stand up, for I have now been sent to you to answer your prayer, to give you the message. Daniel stood up trembling. He said, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you have set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard. Praise until something happens. The answer has already been sent. He went on to explain to Daniel that while he was coming to explain the vision to him, he was what? Caught up in a fight in the spiritual realm. He said, but the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. We fight with what? Not with flesh and blood, but with what? Principalities and wickedness in high places. That's where the answer is going on. When I talked about going into the gap to pray, this was no prayer about down here, Jesus help me. This is about a mother that had to armor up and muster up whatever faith you have. And I'm going to the gap for what I need answered. The message and the answer that Daniel was searching for in his 3-week fast was dispatched from heaven right away. Praise until something happens. Praise until you see the manifestation of your answer. Let's talk about how you can do this. Let's talk about how you can do this. I'm not going to go into talking to you about the frontal cortex, which is located right here in your frontal lobe, and tell you that the frontal cortex is where new information is received, and you can repair old information by not repeating it and believing in your future. I'm not going to really talk to you about the old automatized brain in the medulla oblongata area, where you store all of your anger, all of your stories of failure, all of your fear. I'm going off on a tangent, and I want you to come with me. I learned to pray. Yeah, I learned to pray. I learned to pray. I learned to bind spirits. I learned to clear spirits out of my house. The spirit of death wasn't coming near me. So this is what happened. I remember on November 11th, 1994, I was pregnant with my second daughter. And my obstetrician gave me a call that morning. He was a friend of mine. We had a practice. So he called me up and he said, I'm over here at the hospital. Why don't you come on over and we'll do an ultrasound just to check on the baby? Because this is Friday, my baby's coming on Tuesday. We scheduled a C-section on Tuesday, okay? So it's Friday, so I said, okay, I'll meet you at the hospital. And so as I was going down the stairs from my bedroom, I remember looking over to the right, and I was looking at the washer and the dryer, and I said, I gotta wash these clothes. Then as I continued down to descend to my living area, I thought, what am I gonna cook when I return home this afternoon? My husband, my baby girl who was 4 years old, we all got ready to leave the house. We left the house, and little did I know, friends, that at that moment, when I left my home, I would never return to the same life that I left on that day. There would be no more card-carrying Jacinth. Heaven pulled my name. They pulled my name. They pulled my name. So I went to Crawford Long Hospital and went into the labor and delivery area, well, the waiting area, kind of like, And I sat on the table, and the nurses buckled me up to take an ultrasound of my daughter. And this was just a routine ultrasound just to check things out. And so my obstetrician came, stood over me, and he said, there's a little bit of bradycardia. The baby's heartbeat was a little slow. I said, okay. And he said, you're having a mild contraction. Let's just go through the contraction and see how the baby does. So I'm just sitting there laying on the bed. And now the second time he says to me, well, the baby's not recovering very well. The heart rate is supposed to go back up. And then he approached the table side like this. He's taking off his jacket. We're getting ready to go into C-section. And so I'm looking at him. He says, yeah, we're going to take the baby. And so I sign the appropriate forms. I go in, and he does the C-section. And, women you've had to see, it feels really weird, gentlemen. It's like pushing and pulling. So you wonder if you're going to make it through that, you know? It's very, very uncomfortable. And so the baby's born on Friday, and on the Sabbath, we're there, and the baby has a few issues, and we go on, and my Sunday with here, and I was helping the baby latch on, and I said to myself, now I know what things are supposed to look like. You understand? Because I've been working in this field for a long time. And the baby was not latching on, so I called the nurse. I said, she looks a little grayish. She was born really, really pink, really light, and but she's very beautiful dark skin today. But she was born really pink, so I could see that she was ashen. Her skin was ashen. And so she took the baby, and I just went to sleep, and my husband was there, and my daughter came the next day. So next morning, Monday morning, I woke up, and I am now about to prepare to go home. So I am going to walk over to the nursery to see my baby. And so as I walk towards the nursery, it's glass like that over here, I see the nurses looking at me. And that was really unusual to me. Why are they looking at me? So I walked, and then I walked around. I had to take an L. And they're still looking at me, and I'm wondering, well, this is unusual that I'm getting this much attention. And so these are the words, hi, where's my baby? And so I heard them say, has anyone told you? Exactly. I don't want any information. I just want my baby. Well, what I learned at that time, that my baby had coded a couple of times throughout the night, and the last code was for 20 minutes. I want you to know that after a doctor performs a code for 7 minutes, it's sufficient. If you don't make it after that, they don't have to continue the code. My daughter was coded for 20 minutes. My life began to spiral. Ladies, I learned to go into the gap. I went back to my room, and my obstetrician was standing over here with his hands in his pocket. My husband was standing over here, halfway slumped down the wall. And so I recognized I need to stand up straight, because these are the men in my life right now, and they look a bit confused. So I think right now I need to stand up and focus. Focus, follow one course until successful. Focus. So I had to pull everything that this woman had in her to focus, so I can talk to my obstetrician that's standing there like this, and my husband is almost on his way down. And the obstetrician told me what went on, because he was called much earlier than I woke up, and he came to the hospital. So the question is, do you want to take your child to demise care? Okay. So I didn't know what to do. I kept praying my prayer, Lord, help me. And then I asked them, bring my baby to me. They brought my daughter. I looked directly into her eyes, and I said to her, what should I do? In my right ear, the Holy Spirit whispered. He said, advocate for me. I heard those words that day. Now, when I tell that story, that's not for you to believe. That's not for you to debate. I heard, advocate for me. So now the heavenly realm is ready to fight for me. And God is sending his angels. I didn't know what to do. They kept talking to me about demise care, that she won't make it. The physicians gave me hard information. And throughout the time that she was in the hospital, I would read her chart. Ladies and gentlemen, her chart was contrary to life. I knew that my child needed spiritual intervention. I knew that what I had to ask for was a miracle. I had read about miracles. I've heard people tell the stories in the Bible about miracles. I was card-carrying Advent, so I could tell you about the stories. I had never experienced a miracle in my life. So, what is this thing that I'm asking for? See, I'm a mother. Once that child gets here, that child is on this side of life, and I'm not giving it to death. So me and myself went where? Into the gap. He heard me the first time, though. This was an experience for me to grow in relationship with God. I had to spend time praising that the answer is there so that I can develop confidence in God, belief in his words. I started pulling out his words. The verse I chose was John 11:4. This sickness is not unto death, but that it would glorify the Son of God. I had to start praising now because I had to believe in the answer for 2 years. For 2 years I prayed, and I ended every single prayer with, God, help my unbelief. It wasn't just natural for me. I talked that stuff. You hear me? At the end of every prayer for 2 years, I said, God, help my unbelief. The chart would get worse and worse. But my daughter amazed the physicians. There came a time for her to be evaluated for open heart surgery. For open heart surgery, I said. Well, you know, there's so many angles I can go with this story because, see, that heaven, they were working all over the place because I wasn't going to let them down. I wasn't stopping all the time. All the time I was rushing up there to find out where my daughter's prayer was standing. Can you tell me what's happening now? So many times God gave me information to help me grow with him. See, during this praising period, God is sending you information that only you recognize that he has done, and you start recognizing this thing is bigger than I thought it was. Bigger than I thought it was. Do you know that the hands, I kept saying, God, all I need were a pair of hands to open my child's heart. Do you know these people pushed me back? They did everything they could do not to open my child's heart. At the table with the social worker, the internist, the cardiologist, the neurologist, and the nurse, Dad and I are there, and the neurologist tells me, what do you think you got here? You got right-sided paralysis and semi-comatose state. You can't take care of that. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I was a nurse practitioner for a long time by that time. My husband's a physician. Can you see me? No. They couldn't see me. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. They couldn't see me. And I recognized when we went around the table and that cardiologist said, I will not recommend her to surgery because she will not make it. And after the neurologist female stood up and raised her voice at me, I stood up and raised my voice at her and said, my daughter, if she's going to die, will die on the table. She's going to surgery. Do you know that the physician, the cardiothoracic surgeon that opened my daughter's heart, he and I were aligned in 1975. We're talking about the kingdom of God, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the Heavenly Father here, who saw my life when he was on the cross. He saved this life before I got here. Do you understand that? I am saved, Adventist. I am saved. Now, myself and Dr. Vincent Tam were aligned in 1975. In 1975, I was graduating from Pine Forge Academy. He and I were the same age. His family was in South Vietnam. At the time, we were coming out of the Vietnamese War. The Vietnamese War ended in 1974. There were ambassadors to that country that had to hustle up out of there. Do you remember? Does anyone remember having to catch planes, having to catch helicopters? They were bringing out the people who were in alliance with America at that time, okay? Dr. Vincent Tam said that his father was a very important man in Vietnam at that time. He was in alliance with the American government, and he and his family were taken by helicopter out of Vietnam. He was on his way to do my daughter's surgery. My man was 18 years old. His family came to San Francisco, and he went on with his life. He and I were going to meet. So, of course, I am negotiating and talking with the doctors and the heart team to please open my daughter's heart, because otherwise she was not going to live. There are some heart defects, tracheology or Foley. Some of you might be familiar with that. What you do is you just repair the hole. Baby's going to be okay. My daughter was born with 3 chambers, all right? We have 4. You're functioning with 4 chambers right now. That left ventricle was insufficiently formed, all right? You have the atrium and you have the ventricles. You have the left and right, you have left and right. The left ventricle was, that shares the body out to your lungs and to the rest of your body. That's what you need that ventricle for. She would surely die without that. Her chart kept getting more and more challenging, all right? Anyway, so I looked at the physician that was the head of the surgical department, and he was the top man. I looked at his surgeries because I was there looking at other babies too. I saw one baby who was born the same day that my child was born, and they just took her into surgery. I was born on a Friday, but it wasn't last Friday. Okay? They took baby Jennifer into surgery. By that time, my mom had arrived, and my mom was a nurse, and of course, she's looking around too. So she's there sitting at my daughter's bedside if I'm not there. And so baby Jennifer had her surgery. Her chest was open. It was approximated so perfectly when it closed that you could barely see the cut. This was by the top man, the director of the heart surgery team there. So I was really excited. Great job. And so that day when I went into the intensive care unit, holding my baby, asking them, well, how's my daughter? When is she going into surgery? She says to me, well, he's not going to do her surgery because she's not going to make it. Okay, I'll go back just a little bit. We went into a place for demise care where my daughter was given the morphine and the Demerol. The morphine reduces your respirations so that you can go into sleep, and the Demerol takes away the pain. And I was holding my baby right there, holding her. And I was praying all day. I looked at her respirations. They changed to something they call chain stoking. I called the doctor over and I said to her, I said to him, look at her. He said, he looked at her and he listened. He said, it's going to be a few minutes now. So I held my baby because it was going to be a few minutes. I looked at her rate of respiration and I recognized she has gone from our regular rate of breathing to that place you go before you die. I'm holding her in my arms. At that time, my family was praying. I was praying. I guess a whole lot more people were probably praying by that time. I heard from every member of my family that day, except for one sister. I was wondering why I didn't hear from her. I heard from my mother. I heard from my brother. I heard from my older sister. My baby sister, not one word. So I'm sitting up in there holding my baby. She's at the chain stoking point where she's now taking her last breaths. Jesus in heaven. They are so dramatic. You hear me? He wants you to know that no one else did this but me. You hear me? Dr. Quadrante, who is the cardiologist, says she's not going into surgery, gets a telephone call. In the consultation room where I am, in this huge hospital, in this room, we get a direct phone call in, asked to speak to the doctor in charge. He gets on the phone. I hear it over here on this end. Okay, oh no. And then he hangs up the phone, turns around, spins around at me, and he said to me, you wanted to do this. I said, I don't know what I want to do. The nurse that was sitting next to me grabbed my child out of my lap like it was a football. Took her into the next room, started a code on her. What happened that day, why I hadn't heard from my sister, because she was calling every single doctor she knew. She called Mount Sinai Hospital, who called the room that we were in, spoke to the doctor that was there, and told that doctor, put that child on life support. The surgery that we do up here is 85% successful. We are going to airlift her here tonight. Well, of course, that motivated them to do the surgery. And so they did the surgery. And all I needed were a pair of hands. So what I'm talking about right now is you praise until you see the answer. While you're praising now, this is about God working with you, developing a relationship with you. Hezekiah said, I had a wholehearted devotion with you. I was faithfully walking with you. That's what he said. He's developing a relationship with me. Ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't my heart. It was not my daughter's heart he needed to heal. It was mine. I was too sure of myself. Humble. This is what it took for him to humble me and empower me at the same time. Well, the fight continued. I had to praise until something happened. I'm through now with taking it to him. I have to start singing, praising, thinking. This thing is going to be healed by the kingdom of God. Praise until something happens. Praise until you see the manifestation. It keeps you in tune with God. It keeps you out of depression. It keeps you involved with your power. We can do immeasurable work according to the power that is within us. I had a mustard seed. He had to grow that seed for me. This is the most wonderful place to be, in confidence with God. If you're going to believe in God, if you're going to have a religion, ladies and gentlemen, come on. Come on. Believe in God. Believe that he can do those things. The enemy continued to try to fight me. And when they decided to agree with putting my child on the table, well, you know, around July 1st, doctors transfer, they rotate into hospitals, right? When you're going into a hospital, you got a whole new set of doctors in July, so be careful the month that you choose to go in. So this is November. We got, the Eggleston Hospital had a cardiothoracic surgeon that came in July. The top man is not touching my daughter, neither are the other guys on that team. The junior, the most recent physician that came on board is who they gave my daughter to. So I'm gonna tell you something. You see, when surgeons do work, they have to get their numbers up. They have to get the experience. So what you do is you give them the patient so they can at least get experience if the patient's not gonna make it. So I knew this man just came on board in July. I shook my head. That was too much information. It took my faith back down. It's too much information I had. So now I have to go to pray. This man, very nice man. Remember, he's from South Vietnam. Really nice guy. He sits down, he talks to my husband and myself, and he tells us what he's going to do with the heart. He's talking to me about a heart. I'm just, I'm a mother shaken up. And I said to him, well, how many of these have been successful for you? He gave me a percentage. I can't do math. I'm barely there. I didn't know what he said. So he continues to draw the heart and chambers and all that talk to me. Now, I know under a normal circumstance, I'll probably know what he's talking about, but I couldn't understand what was going on. So he finishes his conversation. He tells us what he did, and he's the new guy on the block. Keep that in mind. I say to him, he said to me, Miss Theodore, do you have any questions? I said, Dr. Tam, do you have any children? He said, yes, I have two. I said, go ahead and do the surgery. All I needed was for someone to understand, to have the heart of a parent, because all God needed were a pair of hands. Now I'm telling you something. I am still praying to ask him to help my unbelief. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is that it didn't develop overnight. I'm just here telling you. And every time I was knocked, I fell over. Do you understand? The heavenly realm stayed with this sister. We took her into surgery. The surgery was successful. The first one was. All right. Then the second one was. Then, after about a year and a half later, the third one was. All God needed were a pair of hands. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Tam opened her heart, and he closed it. This is why it's so important to be, young ladies and young men, this is why it's so important for you to study to show yourself approved unto God and unto yourself. So whatever you are going to become, you are becoming that for a particular purpose. I needed a cardiothoracic surgeon that believed in God. We need you. So Dr. Tam opened and closed, opened and closed, opened and closed. My life was really, really dramatic at that time. A lot of things were going on, but I started to learn to praise until something happened. Otherwise, the depression that is given to you, here, the depression, the edge of the depression that you're standing on, where the enemy will gladly receive you, that's too much. It can take you down. You can die from that. All right? Never walk into where the enemy is, because he lures you in really, really nice. Once he gets you, he grabs you, that's it. So even with depression, God and the angels sent me Dr. Tam. So listen, so they gave Dr. Tam to my daughter, and this is, I think this was his 8th surgery like this, his 8th, all right? And so I'm concerned. However, I learned later on that the procedure that my daughter received was just 8 years old. Prior to that, children were born and went to their demise. There was no surgery to correct that. The only child that had that at that time was 8 years old. Okay? Dr. Tam was studying in Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh Medical Center. He came from there to Eggleston. The procedure was created by a physician named Dr. Norwood. Dr. Tam left Pittsburgh Medical Center. His attending physician was Dr. Norwood, who created the heart surgery that many children have had from that day to this. Once again, that's not for debate. All God needed were a pair of hands. It wasn't her heart he needed to heal. It was mine. Praise, your prayers are answered. Your prayers were heard the first time. We're here to develop our relationship with Jesus Christ. We're here to live the best life that he has planned for us. He has a good plan for you. He wants you to participate in the gifts, in the glories that you receive while you're here. It's his pleasure to give us the answer to our most secret desires. He stays with me now. I won't make a decision without God. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stay faithful to him. And I want to share something else with you, ladies. I want to tell our men how much we need them. Because you see, on November 11th, 1996, my daughter was 2 years old and post-surgery 3 times, successful and healthy. On November 18th, 1996, our family divorced. We need you, gentlemen. We need you. We need you to cover us. We need you to stand by us. We need you to be there to support us. I want to do what would normally be a grounding in my office, but what I'm going to do right now is a covering in the church. Gentlemen, we need you. We need you to walk with us through our toughest times. We need you to pray over us. We need to turn around and know that your tenor, your baritone, and your bass voice is hovering over our home. Our hearts were forever after you. That's what he said in the garden, that our hearts would be forever after you. We are who we are when you stand by our side. We don't want to journey through difficulties by ourselves. That was supposed to be a unifying experience for our family. But you see, I prayed, and you know what the heavenly realm told me? Was that, Jacinth, your prayer regarding your daughter was answered because you were faithful, because you had authority over your daughter. And I came with my authority, speeding to the gap, boldly declaring what I wanted. I went with authority, speeding to the gap, boldly declaring the unification of my family. But gentlemen, I did not have authority over you. I prayed for you. I knocked at the door continuously for you. But the heavenly realm said, he has to accept me. You have to accept the position of priest, coverer, father, lover. We need you.